Elvis Presley. Elvis the Pelvis. Known as the jumpsuit-wearing fever dream who moonwalked so hard through American culture, he forgot to write his own songs, tour the world, or date anyone over 18. From seducing minors to shooting televisions, from self-medicating like a lab rat to dying on the toilet clutching gospel, the King's life was one long cautionary tale in sequence. This isn't a tribute, it's a train wreck. Welcome to Everything Wrong with Elvis Presley. Sorry to interrupt, but Elvis Presley just rolled over in his grave. Because you haven't subscribed yet. Don't be cruel? Thanks. Tupelo to trouble. Before he was the king, Elvis was just a poor white kid from Tupelo, Mississippi, with a love for music and zero chill. Born in 1935 to Vernon and Gladys Presley, who were basically the Walmart version of royalty, Elvis grew up dirt poor in a shotgun house built by his daddy, who promptly went to jail for forging a check. And people say it's humble beginnings that make legends. Spoiler, they also make soap operas. He was a weird, shy mama's boy in school, failed music class, and got bullied for being the weird kid with greasy hair and eyeliner. Seriously, Elvis wore eyeliner before it was cool and somehow didn't get shoved in every locker in Mississippi. After moving to Memphis, he started hanging out on Beale Street and soaking up blues and gospel, which he would later borrow a lot. But let's be honest, nobody looked at teenage Elvis and thought, this kid's gonna revolutionize music and die on a toilet. Yet here we are, one boy, one swivel of the hips, and one prescription pill problem away from changing American culture forever. So thank you, Mississippi, for giving us Elvis and every fever dream that followed. Toilet finale. How do you end one of the most legendary music careers in history? With a heart attack. On the toilet. That's right. Elvis Presley, king of rock and roll, died face down in his Graceland bathroom, pants around his ankles, clutching a book about the Shroud of Turin. You couldn't script a more tragic punchline if you tried. He was 42, bloated, addicted, and, despite what conspiracy theorists insist, very much dead. The official cause? Cardiac arrhythmia. The unofficial cause. A pharmaceutical Mount Everest mixed with enough fried food to kill a linebacker. They tried to make it classy. The press said he died at home. Yeah, in the bathroom. Let's not pretend this was some candlelit, soulful exit. This was Elvis. Bloated, sweaty, and collapsing on the porcelain throne like a tragic parody of his former self. In the end, he went out the way he lived. Larger than life, full of drugs, and surrounded by enablers. Let this be a lesson. If you live like a rock star, eat like a raccoon, and medicate like a laboratory chimp, the toilet might just be your final stage. 14 and Taken. Yes, the king of rock and questionable dating choices. Elvis met Priscilla in Germany when she was 14 years old, and he was a fully grown, 24-year-old man with sideburns sharp enough to cut through FBI wiretaps. While most guys his age were dating adult women or dodging responsibility, Elvis looked at a literal 9th grader and thought, yes, that's the future Mrs. Presley. Gross. Absolutely. Illegal? Technically no, because her parents agreed to it, proving that the 1950s were basically one long unhinged fever dream. They courted for years, which is Elvis speak for she lived at Graceland under supervision while he did whatever he wanted with women his own age. If this were today, he'd be canceled faster than you can say blue suede predator. But back then, it was just romantic. Cue the heart-shaped vomit. By the time they finally got married, Priscilla was 21, and Elvis was still acting like a man-child who thought a peanut butter and bacon sandwich was a food group. Sure, the wedding made headlines, but so did their eventual divorce. Because shocker, grooming a teenager doesn't magically turn into a healthy marriage. Cher. I hardly knew her. Picture this. Cher, future goddess of pop, meets Elvis Presley as a teenager. And what does our boy do? He allegedly tries to get her into bed. Because why not add another minor to his greatest hits of Red Flags collection? Cher later said that Elvis made a move on her when she was just 15. 15. He was already an icon, dripping in leather, rhinestones, and what are you doing, dude? She turned him down, probably because, even at that age, she had more sense than all of Graceland combined. Also because she already had the vocal range, charisma, and career longevity to know she didn't need to be part of a statutory scandal wrapped in sequins. The fact that this barely made headlines at the time tells you everything you need to know about how low the bar was. Today, TMZ would implode. Back then? Oh, that Elvis. Such a rascal. Yeah, a rascal with the dating instincts of a teenage vampire in a YA novel. Good call, Cher. You dodged both the bullet and the bedazzled jumpsuit. Respect. Creeps of Graceland. You know what's not in the Graceland tour brochure? The part where Elvis allegedly hosted sleepovers with groups of teenage girls. Not fans, not interns. Literal school-age girls. Gathered at the King's Palace for pillow fights, movie nights, and makeout sessions that probably would have violated several state laws if Twitter had existed. Multiple sources, including members of his own entourage, have stated that Elvis had a weird fixation on purity and youth, which translated means he liked them young, real young, like should still be in gym class, young. He'd reportedly take these girls on tour, tuck them in, and then kiss them goodnight like the world's creepiest prom chaperone. And while defenders like to say, but he never had sex with them, are we seriously giving points for not committing a felony? That's like praising someone for speeding but not also robbing a bank at the same time. Graceland may have been a dream palace to his fans, but to those girls, it was basically a weird teenage limbo hosted by a man who thought peanut butter and banana sandwiches were foreplay. Control freak in Rhinestones. Forget rock and roll rebel. Elvis was more my way or the makeup remover. According to Priscilla's memoir and multiple insiders, the King of Rock had a king-size control complex. He dictated what Priscilla wore, how she styled her hair, and even how she applied her eyeliner. Yes, eyeliner. Elvis was basically your clingy ex who critiques your outfit, but with a private jet and a mansion full of pink velvet furniture. And it didn't stop with fashion. Elvis allegedly wanted Priscilla to remain pure, even after years of living together, as if he was saving her for a special episode of The Twilight Zone. Meanwhile, he was out on the town doing enough research to start a new STD strain. Let's not forget his legendary mood swings. One day, he's serenading you with a ballad. The next, he's hurling a chair because you didn't laugh at his karate demonstration. The guy didn't need an entourage. He needed a therapist. Or 3. But hey, when you're surrounded by yes men and teenage girls, self-awareness isn't exactly high on the menu. Viva Infidelity. While Priscilla was busy staying pure and dressing like his living Barbie doll, Elvis was reportedly off filming Viva Las Vegas and playing Viva Ann-Margret behind the scenes. Their on-screen chemistry was hotter than a Vegas sidewalk in July, and off-screen, things got even steamier. Rumors of a full-blown affair swirled faster than Elvis's hips in '56. Ann-Margret, a bombshell in her own right, was basically the only woman who could match Elvis's energy, style, and ego. And naturally, that meant he had to flirt, court, and allegedly sleep with her. Because monogamy? That's for people who don't wear sequins to breakfast. To make it worse, the affair was an open secret. Priscilla knew. The press knew. Half of Hollywood knew. But Elvis denied it all with the subtlety of a teenager caught with lipstick on his collar. Denial, gifts, and gaslighting. If cheating was an Olympic sport, Elvis would have been the gold medalist with a diamond-studded jumpsuit. The king may have ruled the charts, but he flunked Loyalty 101 harder than his high school music class. Pharmacy Presley. By the time the 1970s rolled around, Elvis wasn't just the king. He was the walking, mumbling embodiment of your grandmother's entire medicine cabinet. Barbiturates for sleep, amphetamines for energy, tranquilizers for the mood swings. He was basically a Vegas act running on NyQuil and Delusion. He didn't just dabble in pills, he cannonballed into them. His daily drug regimen could knock out a grizzly bear and still leave enough for the rest of the zoo. His stage performances started getting slurred, sluggish, and straight up confusing. Fans weren't sure whether they were watching a concert or a prescription drug commercial in slow motion. And the mood swings? Imagine mixing Red Bull, Ambien, and unresolved trauma into a cocktail and giving it a microphone. That's Elvis, live from Vegas. He went from rock god to bloated mess in a jumpsuit who forgot his lyrics and nearly fell off the stage, multiple times. If you ever wondered what death by fame looks like, look no further than the man who thought a bacon sandwich could soak up 40 pills a day. Dr. Feelbad? Enter Dr. George Nicopolis, better known as Dr. Nick, a man whose medical degree might as well have been printed on a napkin from Graceland. This guy supplied Elvis with more pharmaceuticals than a CVS warehouse. Over 10,000 doses in just the final years of Elvis's life. 10,000. That's not a prescription, that's a logistical operation. Elvis wasn't just a patient, he was a walking drug experiment. Need to sleep? Here's some downers. Need to wake up? Take these uppers. Need to feel immortal? Try mixing them both and throw in a karate kick. And the best part? Dr. Nick somehow convinced himself he was helping. Eventually, even the medical board had to say, "Dude, what?" and revoked his license for overprescribing. You know it's bad when a 1970s medical authority goes, maybe 10,000 pills is a bit much. Elvis didn't need a doctor. He needed an intervention, a detox program, and maybe an exorcism. But what he got was a guy with a pen, a pad, and zero regard for the human liver. Long live the king, just not his pharmacist. The hands of delusion. In his final years, Elvis wasn't just the king of rock. He thought he was the messiah of medicine. No, seriously. He reportedly believed he had healing powers in his actual hands, like Jesus, but with worse hair by the end. Friends and family claimed he would lay on hands to cure their headaches, backaches, or general sadness, while standing there like some rhinestone faith healer from a church that also sells fried Twinkies. This wasn't a stage gimmick. This was full-on spiritual Elvis. The man who once gyrated his way into scandal now thought he could cure your flu with a tap on the forehead and a peanut butter sandwich. "Be healed," he probably said before nodding solemnly and walking away with his cape flapping like a delusional wizard. Honestly, it's amazing he didn't start his own religion, the Church of Presley, baptism by banana pudding, communion through fried chicken and gospel records. The man had charisma, but by the end, he also had a prescription list the length of the Bible and a God complex big enough to rival the Grand Canyon. Faith healer? More like fate sealer. Red Scare rocker. Ah yes, the ultimate irony. Elvis, the hip-thrusting rebel who terrified conservative America in the 50s, spent his later years absolutely convinced that he was the last line of defense against the communist menace. Somewhere between the amphetamines and the Rhinestones, he decided the Beatles, yes, the Beatles, were corrupting America with their filthy hair and music. So what did he do? He wrote a letter to President Richard Nixon asking to become a federal agent so he could personally take down the drug culture, hippie movement, and communist brainwashing spreading through the youth. That's right. Mr. Love Me Tender turned into a polyester-clad McCarthy. He genuinely believed that the British invasion was a covert op from the Kremlin. Meanwhile, he was popping pills like Tic Tacs and sleepwalking through Vegas shows. If hypocrisy were a currency, Elvis could have bought out the entire Soviet Union. It's the kind of paranoid energy you expect from a guy living in a bunker, not someone who dressed like a bedazzled eagle and thought he could read your aura. Elvis didn't just fear communism. He waged psychological warfare against shampoo, peace signs, and guitar riffs. Badge of dishonor. If you think showing up uninvited to the White House in 1970 wearing a velvet cape and demanding a federal badge is the most Elvis thing ever, you're right. In a move straight out of a rejected Forrest Gump script, Elvis hand-delivered a letter to the Secret Service asking to be made a federal agent at large so he could fight drugs. With Nixon, while high on drugs. Somehow this worked. Nixon, perhaps wooed by Elvis's offer of a gun and a karate demonstration, agreed. They took a photo. Elvis in a giant belt buckle, Nixon looking like he just smelled peanut butter in the curtains, and handed him a badge. A real badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. It's like giving Cookie Monster a bakery. The irony? Elvis wanted to fight the exact counterculture he helped create. He feared marijuana and LSD, even while his own veins were a pharmaceutical buffet. It wasn't just tone deaf, it was an entire symphony of hypocrisy. Elvis didn't want justice. He wanted a souvenir, and he got one. Proof that if you're famous enough, you can literally cosplay your way into federal law enforcement. Locked, loaded, and unhinged. Elvis didn't just like guns, he loved them. Slept with them, carried them everywhere, probably named them. The man turned Graceland into an armory with shag carpet. He once even shot a TV screen because it dared to display Robert Goulet, the horror. His entourage reported countless hotel lamps and televisions falling victim to his itchy trigger finger. He'd get annoyed, pull out a pistol, and blam, problem solved. Furniture feared him. Electronics begged for mercy. He wasn't just the king. He was the Duke of Domestic Destruction. There's a reason his staff started calling his tantrums target practice. Who needs therapy when you can just unload a .357 Magnum into your couch? It wasn't just recklessness. It was a symptom of a man whose fame, ego, and mental health were spiraling like a broken record. At a time when he needed help, he armed himself instead. Elvis didn't go quietly. He went bang, bang, boom, with a trail of shattered glass and burnt upholstery in his wake. And they say rock stars have issues. Parking lot shootout. There's having a short temper, and then there's Elvis Presley firing a gun at a random car because it annoyed him. According to those close to the king, one day he looked out the window, saw a parked car on his property, and decided the most reasonable solution wasn't a polite inquiry. It was a loaded firearm and a severe case of celebrity rage. Pop quiz. What kind of person sees a car and thinks, you know what this situation needs? Bullets. Elvis, apparently. This wasn't self-defense. This wasn't even road rage. This was, that car is parked weird, I'm famous, and my gun collection is bored. We've reached the level of diva where property lines are enforced with hollow points. You'd expect this behavior from a mob boss, not a guy who sang lullabies in a sequined jumpsuit. The king didn't just lose his patience, he lost his grip on reality, on boundaries, on what sane people consider normal Tuesday behavior. If you think that sounds like a stable man in charge of his decisions, I have a peanut butter and gunpowder sandwich to sell you. Deep fried diet plan? Elvis didn't just eat like a king, he ate like a kingdom under siege. His daily menu looked like a dare from a frat house cookbook. Deep fried peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwiches, sometimes multiple per sitting. His fridge was stocked like a carnival concession stand, pudding, soda, cheeseburgers, and enough bacon to bribe a small army. His favorite monstrosity? The legendary Fool's Gold Loaf, a hollowed-out loaf of bread stuffed with an entire jar of peanut butter, an entire jar of jelly, and a pound of bacon. Calories? Somewhere between immediate regret and final curtain. And this wasn't a treat. This was a lifestyle. While athletes carb-loaded before games, Elvis grease-loaded before naps. His arteries weren't clogged, they were gridlocked. The man didn't just eat food, he hunted it down, deep-fried it, rolled it in lard, and chased it with a milkshake. He went from a pelvis-thrusting heartthrob to a sluggish shell of himself, and his diet was a massive reason why. Elvis didn't just live fast. He chewed fast, swallowed hard, and let his legacy drown in a river of bacon grease. King of nowhere, Elvis Presley was a global superstar who never left the US. Let that sink in. The man had fans in every corner of the planet, but unless your country had a Vegas buffet and a sheriff's badge, you were fresh out of luck. Despite demand from literally everywhere, he never toured internationally. Not once. Why? Because his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, didn't have a passport, or a birth certificate, or a legal name, really. But we'll get to that disaster in a minute. It wasn't a scheduling issue, it was a crime-dodging issue. Parker couldn't leave the country without risking arrest or deportation, and Elvis, eternally loyal or chronically passive, take your pick, just went along with it. Sorry, Europe, the king can't come to the phone right now. He's too busy enabling his shady handler to keep dodging immigration. So instead of historic world tours, Elvis did 636 shows in Las Vegas. That's not international fame. That's a residency with sequins. If Elvis had toured globally, he could have doubled his legacy. Instead, he stayed parked in Nevada like a sweaty, drugged-up jukebox. The fraud behind the throne? Let's talk about Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, puppet master, and walking red flag with a southern accent. First, he wasn't a colonel. Second, his name wasn't Tom. And third, he wasn't American. He was a Dutch illegal immigrant named Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk, who fled to the US under murky circumstances, including whispers of involvement in a murder. This guy reinvented himself in the greatest case of fake it till you make it in entertainment history. He wore fake military medals, invented a southern drawl, and somehow convinced the world he was showbiz royalty. Meanwhile, he was bleeding Elvis dry with a contract that gave Parker 50% of everything. Not 10%, not 20%, 50. As in, every time Elvis shook his hips, Parker got half a paycheck. The king made millions, but his manager made millions more by doing less and manipulating more. Worse, Parker kept Elvis locked in the US to protect his own immigration status. So, while the world begged for Presley, Parker kept him on a leash in Vegas like a glittery golden goose that couldn't leave the coop. Elvis had the talent, Parker had the leash, and the scissors. Stolen soundtrack? Here's a fun fact they don't mention on Graceland tours. Elvis built his empire on music pioneered by black artists, and rarely gave them credit. He didn't invent rock and roll. He packaged it, sold it, and wore tighter pants doing it. While Big Mama Thornton was belting out Hound Dog with raw power, Elvis turned it into a polite radio hit and made millions. Yes, he was inspired by gospel and blues. But inspired is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. He rode a cultural wave created by African American musicians, many of whom never saw a fraction of his success. Elvis became the acceptable white face for a sound mainstream America wasn't ready to accept from black voices. That's not just cultural appropriation, it's theft with a hair pomade twist. He didn't just borrow their style, he got rich while they got forgotten. And while he reportedly respected black artists in private, he did very little publicly to share the spotlight. So next time someone calls Elvis the king of rock, maybe remind them that the throne was built by people who never got the crown. Private Presley, publicity king. Guess who got drafted in 1958 and didn't go crying to his lawyer? That's right, Elvis Presley, America's sparkly hip-thrusting heartthrob, traded rhinestones for rations and served in the US Army. Kind of. For 2 whole years, Elvis was stationed in Germany, technically serving, but somehow always managing to look like he'd wandered onto a photo shoot for GQ, military issue. He didn't see combat, unless you count fighting off teenage fangirls or dodging KP duty thanks to his VIP status. But don't worry, he used that time very productively. He met Priscilla, you know, the 14-year-old, started popping pills, and brought his entourage along to help him survive the horrors of barracks with no velvet upholstery. He even shaved his pompadour for duty, and America wept like he'd been sent to the gallows instead of basic training. The whole Elvis the Soldier narrative was a PR goldmine, but let's be honest, he didn't storm Normandy. He stormed hotel minibars and came home with a drug habit and a minor in tow. Elvis in the army was less about national service and more about preserving the brand, one buzz cut and benzodiazepine at a time. The curse of Lisa Marie. Elvis may have left the building, but his legacy sure didn't. Enter Lisa Marie Presley, his only child, his heiress, and possibly the unluckiest woman in the history of sequined bloodlines. Lisa Marie didn't just inherit Graceland and royalties. She inherited a gravitational pull toward lawsuits, bankruptcies, addiction, Scientology, and Michael Jackson. That's not a life path. That's a lifetime movie franchise. She married the king of pop, divorced him, married Nicolas Cage, briefly, and somehow managed to lose hundreds of millions of dollars while owning Elvis Presley's estate. That's like winning the lottery and setting the ticket on fire to light a bacon candle. From rehab stints to public feuds to financial scandals that made national news, Lisa Marie lived a life that screamed, "The Presley curse is real, y'all." She had talent, sure, but she also had a front row seat to fame-induced implosion. And when she passed away in 2023, the world mourned not just the loss of a daughter of rock royalty, but the tragic collapse of a family tree held together with rhinestones and regret. If legacies were cautionary tales, Elvis's bloodline would be required reading. Graceland, the Repo Men Cometh. In 2024, Graceland, yes, the Graceland, almost got foreclosed. That's right, the King's Castle was nearly auctioned off like a used RV. Apparently, someone claimed Lisa Marie Presley used the mansion as collateral for a shady $3.8 million loan that was never repaid. Cue the legal chaos. Fans gasped, lawyers circled. The Presley estate responded with a collective, "Wait, what?" Turns out, the whole thing was likely a fraud. The lender allegedly didn't even exist. So not only was Elvis's sacred ground almost sold off like an abandoned timeshare, but it was scammed into that mess by forged documents and corporate ghost stories. Some say it was a con, others call it Presley karma. Either way, it made headlines and reminded everyone that not even American musical history is safe from modern-day debt collectors and shady paperwork. Imagine tourists snapping selfies in the jungle room while an auctioneer's voice echoes in the halls. Do I hear $1 million for the pink Cadillac couch? Elvis didn't just leave the building. In 2024, he almost got evicted from it. Bye-bye Bodyguards. In 1976, Elvis fired 3 of his closest companions: Red West, Sonny West, and David Hebler. These weren't just bodyguards. They were part of his inner circle, known as the Memphis Mafia. They fetched his pills, blocked screaming fans, and probably knew more secrets than the CIA. So why were they canned? Money issues? Control? Or maybe because they dared to speak out about his drug use? Whatever the reason, Elvis, through his dad Vernon, axed them like a mafia boss cleaning house. And the moment those pink slips hit the table, the trio did what any betrayed inner circle would do. They wrote a tell-all book, Elvis, What Happened? Dropped just 2 weeks before his death, exposing his addictions, mood swings, and all the juicy details his fans didn't want to believe. It was the original celebrity betrayal saga, loyalty turned liability. Elvis didn't just lose protection, he lost the people who might have saved him. He chose denial over intervention and spun the wheel of fame straight into oblivion. The king didn't just fall, he burned the bridge while falling. The gas station grapple. Let's rewind to 1956, when Elvis was still new on the scene, and apparently already ready to throw hands. One day, he stopped at a gas station and a crowd swarmed him for autographs. The station owner, not loving the mob scene, asked him to cut it out. So what did Elvis do? He allegedly threw a punch. Because what better way to thank your fans than with a right hook? The result? A shiny assault and disorderly conduct charge. Don't worry, the case got dismissed, but not before cementing his bad boy rep and giving the tabloids enough fuel to print headlines like rocker and rumble and hip swinger, fist flinger. It was classic 1950s teenage hysteria meets celebrity ego. The golden formula for early Elvis PR. Girls screamed, parents panicked, preachers wept. Meanwhile, Elvis was busy getting arrested like it was part of the tour schedule. Sure, it's a blip on the radar now, but back then, this was full-on hide your daughters and your gas station attendants energy. And thus, the myth of Rebel Elvis was born, one swing at a time. The drunk chimp sidekick. Every rock star needs a mascot, and Elvis chose a whiskey-drinking chimpanzee named Scatter. Yes, Scatter wore people clothes, lived at Graceland, and reportedly drank alcohol, threw tantrums, and bit guests. Nothing screams mental stability like handing bourbon to a primate and letting him loose in your 14-room mansion. Elvis thought Scatter was hilarious. Friends and staff, not so much. Scatter once lifted a woman's dress in front of guests. Another time, he allegedly trashed an entire room. You know, normal chimp stuff. If the chimp had been trained by Hunter S. Thompson. Eventually, Scatter became too aggressive and had to be locked away, which is ironically the same fate Elvis was spiraling toward emotionally. Some say Scatter died from alcohol poisoning. Others say old age. But let's face it, this chimp didn't just party like Elvis. He was Elvis, in simian form, unpredictable, pampered, and fueled by chaos. It's amazing they didn't give the little guy a record deal and a jumpsuit. Segregation, but make it sparkly. Elvis owed his entire sound to black music, but good luck finding a black artist on his tour roster. While Chuck Berry and Sam Cooke were busy shattering racial barriers, Elvis was doing segregated concerts in cities where black fans couldn't even get in the front door. And touring with black performers? Rare to non-existent. He might have been inspired by black gospel and blues, but he wasn't standing beside those artists on stage. His PR team knew white America wasn't ready to watch their daughters scream for a black man on stage. So Elvis, the safe rebel, kept the spotlight and the profits to himself. To be fair, he reportedly admired black musicians personally, but publicly, he played it safer than a mom at a PTA meeting. Elvis took the culture, the style, the soul, and left the representation behind. That's not homage. That's erasure in glitter form. He may have rocked the mic, but he missed the movement. And there you have it. Elvis may have been a hot mess in Rhinestones, but he gave the world a sound, a swagger, and a shake no one could ignore. What do you think of Elvis Presley? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.